life finds a way. I'm Liam, this is Rob, and welcome to the Hey Guys podcast. This week, after the undeniable low of having to rewatch Howard the Duck last week, we've decided to cover a stone cold classic, one of the most important movies of my youth, and undoubtedly one of the biggest movies of all time. A movie that still stands up nearly 30 years after its initial release, and one that actually makes me a little bit depressed. Not because it isn't great, of course, far from it, but because it's one of those all too rare game-changing moments in cinema. We just don't get them anymore. The last one I can think of, and not everyone's going to agree with me on this, is probably Avatar. Was the last time I saw something truly. I know you're not a big fan of the movie, but I can't think of another film since Avatar where I went to the cinema and saw something I'd never seen before. And Jurassic Park delivered that back in 1993, and I feel like it was something we used to get quite regularly in our youth. These kind of big jumps in technology. It's the same with video games. Yeah. You had this sudden jump to N64, like Mario 64, and 3D graphics, all these other things. And now everything seems to be incremental, and I can't think of another big jump, but Jurassic Park is one of maybe 4 or 5 of those key moments in my life when you saw those dinosaurs on the screen for the first time and you're like, holy shit, I've never seen anything like this. And of course, unlike some people's opinions on Avatar, I think most people agree Jurassic Park is an absolute masterpiece. However, Rob is known to throw a curveball every so often. So before I go any further, are we on the same page here, or is this going to be a classic Rob hot take?
Right. Before we go into Jurassic Park being the 6th best Jurassic Park film, no, I'm joking.
I just started gushing with sweat. Oh my goodness.
I call bullshit on the fact that you called Howard the Duck an all-time low. No, you enjoyed that. I'm sorry.
I did. No, yes. But we've talked about this before. There's a massive difference between something being good and something being enjoyable. Yeah. We have had the rare cases of both being bad and just horrible to watch. Howard the Duck is objectively bad, but also oddly enjoyable to watch. So I will give you that.
Very much so. What was fantastic about Jurassic Park was what was on screen. When you first see the T-Rex, when you first see them looking at the herd of the dinosaurs, you're feeling, well, I mean, 1993, so 10-year-old me is feeling the same, I guess, that Alan Grant is feeling when he's just staring at that herd out of the car.
You're such a weird 10-year-old kid. Yeah. You'd be like, anyone else would be like, oh, so I feel the same as like Tim or Lex. You're like, no, I feel the same as, middle-aged Alan Grant.
I'm sorry, but did you see the look on his face? And that is fantastic acting from Sam Neill, because he is looking a fuck all in real life, isn't he? Let's be fair. But he is staring at these dinosaurs, and then you see them on screen, and it looks fantastic. And Jurassic Park has this, I guess, legacy now of films being before JP and after JP. When you look at like what films were delivered, especially with effects or animatronics, things like that, you can see what they did before Jurassic Park, and then you see what they did after, when the technology moved, when the technology just took leaps and bounds, and it looks fantastic to the point where you're actually running with the dinosaurs, and it doesn't look ropey at all. We mentioned last week about how Howard the Duck looked really good to a point, but the Dark Overlord looked ropey as fuck at the end.
Yeah, well, it was a clear divide at that point in 1986 between the physical effects, which were fantastic, and Stan Winston was involved in both of these movies, and the CG effects. Yeah. And in 1986, clearly they weren't there. But
there's I've mentioned it before. There's a TV show on Netflix called The Movies That Made Us, and there's a big episode around Jurassic Park. What they did, the time they spent doing the T-Rex, it was all built around that T-Rex. It was, if you couldn't make him look real, you weren't going to make anything else look real. And then what they brought on screen with that T-Rex is absolutely fantastic. Now, I know you got the animatronic stuff as well with the T-Rex when he's picking up the cars and there's things like that. It is a massive animatronic as well. But when he's running, when he's moving, it looks so good. Even today, what are we now? We're 20 years on. No, we're 30
29 years on.
Yeah, we'll be 30 years on next
year.
Yeah,
20 years is what you think it is, and then you do the math and go, fuck, it's only 30 years. Yeah.
30 years on from it, and it still holds up. You put that now against, what was the last one? Dominion? You put that against Dominion, and it still looks great.
Yeah, it does. And the thing is, I know that, like you said, there was a combination between CG and animatronics. But if the CG wasn't there, then those jumps, which feel very natural, and they're often obviously in the same scene, they would clash so badly. Like if the CG wasn't up to the scratch of the animatronics, but they absolutely are. And as you said, Spielberg wasn't convinced with the idea of using CG to such a high level for this film, and it was only when they showed them what he could do with the T-Rex that he was suddenly on board, and obviously things took off from there. But a big part of that, of course, beyond the CG, because like you mentioned, there's the kind of before Jurassic Park. I actually put two movies in that kind of bracket. I think of T2 and Jurassic Park. I know they're like 2 years apart, but those are the two films, I think, to me, that feel like that crossover from like those late 80s movies where the emphasis was purely on physical effects, fantastic for the physical effects towards the end of the 80s. But then suddenly in 91 and 93, you've got them inching towards this world of CG, and both of them...
They're two separate entities though as well, aren't they?
Oh,
they're
absolutely
fantastic, but like the way you have the liquid metal in T2, and we will get to this in a future episode when we do T2, but the way the liquid metal works, the way the bullets hit him and hits Robert Patrick, and the ripples going through his body, it's again, that holds up to this day. But you've got these massive creatures on screen that people have to actually act with, have to look at, have to move with, and they look absolutely. You can actually believe that they are there. They are on screen.
Oh yeah, and you feel that 2-year jump. Like from a purely technical perspective, Jurassic Park does more. And it is arguably more impressive because, Terminator 2, the effects similarly hold up incredibly well, but they're more limited. But like, I guess my point being in that regard is that those were the first two movies that I remember as a young age when suddenly the CG looked as good as the physical effects. Like before then, as you mentioned with Howard the Duck, we had the same issue when we did the Willow podcast a few months ago, was that it stood out like a sore thumb. Like you were just like, oh, well, that's just CG. Whereas all of a sudden, it's kind of like, the technology had been there. It was the same with, I think I've used this analogy before, with touchscreens and the iPhone. Touchscreen technology had been around for years, but iPhone was the first one to do it right. And it was the same with CG. CG had been around for a long time. And you could make an argument that James Cameron was maybe the first to implement it really successfully with The Abyss. But, that was 1989, another film we'll have to do on this podcast. But yeah, you were suddenly getting this jump like from The Abyss to Terminator 2, and then suddenly with Jurassic Park was truly something you'd never seen before because the movie was so reliant upon the special effects. But it's not just the special effects. A big part of this is Spielberg. And you've already mentioned there that classic Spielberg trick of having people's reactions. And he's constantly building that sense of awe, that sense of wonderment, something you can't have in the subsequent Jurassic Park films, something that's always been a problem with the sequels. So much of the first film is built around the idea you've never seen anything like this.
Well, the problem you get with the sequels compared to this film is an exploration of the it's a love letter to the dinosaurs. This is like, okay, we made the dinosaurs, they're back now. All we want to do is watch them, is study them, and then all of a sudden, then again, like Howard the Duck, this film is a tale of two halves, but this two halves is done quite well.
Oh, quite well, yeah.
Right. So you get the exploration side of it, you get the introduction, you get the love letter, and then you get the action, you get the horror, you get the thriller. I mean, it is technically a horror. It's a slasher film, especially with T-Rex and, forgive me because I'm not a dinosaur.
The Velociraptors.
There you go. The ones that spit at Nedry. But when you go into the sequels, it's all about then just how can we take these dinosaurs and make them kill somebody in a different way. Or
it's just building. It's just bigger.
Yeah, and they are just like, okay, we're going to have bigger action set pieces over and over. But this one wasn't that. This one was basically just, okay, we have these dinosaurs. We have to keep people entertained. But look what we can do on screen. And that's like, I think the story was second to what they wanted to deliver. You have what we can deliver on screen. Then you have the story. Then you have the character development around it. Then you have the second part where it's right, we're going to eugenics.
It's a bit of a roller coaster, the second half. Like basically from the moment the T-Rex shows up and you have that, which we'll get to in a moment, because I think it might be one of the greatest set pieces in cinematic history. From that point onwards, like you said, it becomes a different film. And it's strange after Howard the Duck, where we talked about how that becomes a different movie once you get to the lab. The only problem is the second half of that movie is terrible. Whereas this movie, the first half is fantastic, but it's exactly what you said. And it's that classic it remains not the film, but nobody films people's reactions better than Steven Spielberg. Like, before he shows you something on screen, he'll show you how amazed the people in the film are. So you're already like, oh, Jesus Christ, what's coming? Because you're seeing the look on their face. Like you said, you get that with Dr. Grant. And you're like, well, what are we going to see? And then you see it. And of course, it lives up to those expectations.
And no more so than that build-up with, like, we're just going to watch this water.
I mean, it's a masterpiece. I mean, like,
this water just shaking. And all of a sudden then, bang, it's done. Well, actually, it's not bang, is it? The water's shaking.
It's not.
And then it's nothing. You look into there, you don't see him. And then all of a sudden, there's his eye. There's the Tyrannosaurus. And again, when you see it then through the eyes of the kids and stuff, it is like a magical moment, even though you are about to lose your life, I guess.
Yeah, and like you say, like everyone thinks of the water, but it's actually a bit of a slow burn, that sequence. Like you actually hear the footsteps first, and again plays into the whole idea that so many of the scenes in this film, like half of this film feels like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where it's all built around wonderment. The other half feels like a horror movie, and it starts like a horror. The opening sequence, where you don't see the velociraptor, you just know it's in the cage. All you see is its eye. Yeah. That is filmed like a horror film. Everyone's very aware that there is a monster in a cage. It makes no sense for that guy to have to go up and lift the gator, the guy who gets killed. That's insane, but whatever, we'll allow it. But all that is built around, there's a monster in here, the guy gets dragged away and killed. It's a horror film. The T-Rex, you hear the steps, then you have that classic bit when you see the water. Then you have then you see the goat's leg gets thrown on the roof. There's a fair bit of blood in this. Then you see the eye, and what happens next is, like I said, I think one of the great set pieces of all time. I mean, I've got a list here of kind of, and some of he is competing with himself to a certain degree, but the ones that kind of came to mind were the opening sequence of Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Matrix hallway sequence leading to Bullet Time, and the Death Star trench run. And I'll throw in the Dark Knight Batpod scene, because I think that's a fantastic
one as well. Jaws, you're going to need a bigger boat scene.
I was going to put in Jaws, but I was like, dude, I can't just have all Spielberg.
Oh, mate, you've got to, because like you said, he's competing with himself. And if you want to build, if you want one that builds suspense, if you want one that builds suspense, the whole Jaws thing where it's just like you're going to need a bigger boat thing, or even when they're singing "Show Me the Way to Go Home," as he's outside. Do you know what I mean? That is Steven Spielberg to a T, and that's one of his first films.
It was unbelievable. I mean, I think he had done what was the chase film he did for TV?
Jewel.
What was that?
Jewel,
that was it. Yeah, which is a very good film in itself. But obviously, when most people think of Spielberg, they think of Jaws. And we've mentioned before the run he was on at the early stage of his career, but you could make an argument that he is at the peak of his powers in 1993. Like, make no mistake, in 1993, he released Jurassic Park and Schindler's List. Talk about I can't imagine any director in the history of cinema has had such an impressive 1-2 in the same year. I mean, when you talk about the best directors of all time, I mean, you talk about, who would it be? Spielberg. Sorry, I did have a list here, which I'd written down, but of course then they get lost in the notes, which is very annoying. But I mean, he's certainly arguably the greatest mainstream director of all time.
Yeah, I would say he's definitely in the running, if not, like you say, the leader of it. It's funny how you say the greatest 1-2, right? It's not just like you get Schindler's List and you get Jurassic Park, two completely different films. The 1-2 is basically a nut shot and a face shot, isn't it? You got Schindler's List that just hits you straight in the balls, just knocks you to the floor. It's, oh my God, it's heart wrenching. And then then this one just like kind of just hits you in the face constantly. It's barrage after barrage after barrage of just face shots, if we're going to go with that analogy again, because it's all just in your face, this film. It's just, especially the second half.
I can't imagine any director having two films that are so different but so well received, so successful in terms of like basically delivering two arguably perfect movies. Sorry, I was trying to think of the other directors at the time, but the only other ones I think are in the same category, you would think Kubrick, Scorsese, Hitchcock, a lot of people would say. I mean, I would argue Cameron, but you'd probably say that his output suddenly hasn't been quite enough to put him in the same category. Some people would say Nolan, but I actually think his movies are a little bit too cold, perhaps. I actually think Nolan, in terms of a mainstream movie maker, is the complete opposite end of the spectrum from Spielberg. Some people, their criticism of Spielberg is that he's too schmaltzy, but I think it gives his movie warmth. something which is completely lacking from Nolan films. Nolan films are very good, and I'm a fan, but there's a coldness and a distance to them. Like I said, the complete opposite. Everything about Spielberg movies, despite the scale of the movie, despite the fact there's dinosaurs, it's all about heart, and that absolutely comes through in this film.
We definitely have to add Michael Bay to that list, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Fucking at all.
The only thing you'd say with, I guess, going back to Spielberg is that since I'd say 2005 was maybe his last great year, and some people would disagree with that. I mean, 2005 was War of the Worlds in Munich, and I actually really like both of those. I know you're not a Tom Cruise fan, but since then, it's been a little bit dodgy, his output. I mean, it was only recently, I think West Side Story was a return to form for him. I'm not a musical guy, but I thought that film was absolutely spectacular.
Not watched it, but to be fair, I didn't mind Ready Player One. I thought he did quite well with Ready Player One.
Ready Player One was perfectly decent, but again, I don't think it's not going to be troubling the kind of top 10 list of best Spielberg.
No, but to be fair, you ask anybody these days, have you seen who directed Ready Player One? You're not going to get a lot of people going Spielberg, because it doesn't feel like a Spielberg film.
No, it really doesn't. It really doesn't. But his later films do have a certain sheen. But I guess the great thing about Jurassic Park isn't just the fact that you've got Spielberg on top form. Like, everyone here is batting 100. Everyone is just absolutely slaying it. You've got, brilliant special effects, brilliant leads. I don't think anyone would have necessarily picked these out of a hat as the most obvious leads for this film, but everyone's fantastic in it. You've got a brilliant director, the screenplay by Michael Crichton, who obviously wrote the book. David Coep also worked on the screenplay at the top of his game. And it's also got this amazing supporting cast. Like, Samuel L. Jackson knocks that out of the park. Like, everyone remembers Wayne Knight as Nedry. It's something we keep coming back to when we do this podcast. When we're covering the best movies, all the side characters all have their moment. Yeah. Even it's like Muldoon with his clever girl line and stuff.
I love Nedry in this when he's having dinner and the guy from Eugenics. It is Eugenics, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I know exactly what you're going to say.
And he gives him the stuff, and then he gives him the can. He's just there, just slapping his hands like a seal. Just.
See, I actually thought it was the bit after that, because he's such a big kid and he's so deplorable. But then when they kind of stop talking and the woman comes over and gives him the check, and he looks up at him and so suddenly goes super serious. He goes, "Don't cheap at me now, Dolan. Don't you?" Just like out of it, it's like, I'm not paying for this, dude. If you want me to do it, you've got to at least pay for my dinner.
His desk sickens me. The desk he's got,
disgusting.
He's doing all the computer works, then he's got to go. He says, "I need to go and do something manually." Oh my God, his desk is just so messy. It winds me up.
Well, there are some problems with this film. I mean, his desk is one of those things, and I'm the same as you. I don't deal well with a mess. One of the things that doesn't get mentioned, and this is a bit of a sidestep, but it's just one of the, I'm not sure if it's a problem because it's abandoned so quickly. Richard Attenborough is supposed to be Scottish in this film. Now, the weirdest thing is, right, if he was just doing his accent all the way through the film, you'd be like, oh, well, he's doing the Sean Connery card. And bizarrely, Sean Connery was up for that role, but it ended up going to Richard Attenborough, who came out of semi-retirement because Spielberg talked him into it. But if you go back and watch this film, the first sequence when Richard Attenborough shows up and has the interview on site with, who was it, Laura Dern and
Sam Neill.
Sam Neill. He has a really strong, if somewhat questionable, Scottish accent, but it is undeniably there. He is going for a Scottish accent. And in the movie, he mentions the fact that he's Scottish. That is the only scene where this guy's fucking Scottish. He abandons it immediately. There's no, like, it kind of drifts away. He does it for the opening sequence, and then he was just like, nah, I'm not doing Scottish anymore. And he's just English for the rest of the film. It's bananas. At least Sean Connery has the decency to be from moment one. Fuck this. I'm not doing, I don't know, I'm just doing a broad Scottish accent. He didn't sound anything like that. But, Sean Connery is just fucking Sean Connery, and that's it. Doesn't matter if he's Irish, Albanian,
Egyptian,
Russian, Spanish, Egyptian. It doesn't fucking matter. But Richard Attenborough bizarrely goes, for a scene, I'll try Scottish. And then afterwards, he's like, nah, I'm fucking done with that.
You know what winds me up now, though? Watching this again, I've seen it many times, but watching this again, especially now after watching, and this is more of a hindsight thing that winds me up, especially after watching the 5 sequels now, is the fact that and spoilers for anyone who hasn't watched them, Jurassic Park Horror Dinosaur House, whatever that second one was.
That was,
Fallen Kingdom?
Fallen Kingdom, that's it.
Fallen Kingdom. I prefer Horror Dinosaur House.
That's much better. Yeah.
That one, all of a sudden, it's I've always been the partner of Richard Hammond. He created the island because of me. My daughter, was one of the main scientists who did the cloning. It's like
so. This is BD Wong now, yeah.
No, not BD Wong. This is the James Cromwell from the second one.
Yeah. No, sorry, yeah, I got you.
The part, and we'll get into BD Wong moving up, being a scientist, and all of a sudden becoming some sort of dark overlord in the next couple of films. But
happens. Well, dude, if we're living in a world where the Velociraptors become the good guys, so yeah, you live long enough, the bad guys become the good guys. It's all insane at this point.
It's more a hindsight thing that winds me up, and they do it all the time when they do sequels and things like this. They have to rewrite the story a little bit, and it's like, oh, okay, James Hammond had a partner. No mention of a partner. There's mentions of shareholders. There's no mention of a guy that actually helped you create any of this. So it kind of winds you up when it moves on. But it's a hindsight thing that winds me up.
Of course, and you do get this in a lot of films where they always want to link things back to the movie that you love. They constantly want to remind you, make no mistake, like the most recent films, especially the first one, they're very much your legacy sequels where, yes, they're continuing the story, but really the first one is basically remaking the first film. And I actually think Jurassic World is probably the second best Jurassic Park film. I actually think Jurassic World's pretty decent. But then they, like the original trilogy, they get progressively worse again because they run out of ideas. And at this point, I mean, I'm saying that, but honestly, I haven't seen Jurassic World Dominion. And it's the first one I've not seen at the cinema. And I won't be going to go because I've just run out of interest.
I saw Dominion at the cinema. The one thing I think Dominion missed is a shirtless Malcolm. Or an open-shirted Malcolm. I mean, dude, Jeff Goldblum in this film is easing that sex appeal. He's just got that shirt unbuttoned. He's got that little bit of glistening sweat. Mates,
It's strange as well, because he's at his sexiest when he's really doing fuck all, because from that point onwards, he's just injured. So for the most part, you've got Richard Attenborough putting blankets on him. But they cut back to that scene when obviously he's recuperating. And they know what they've got because the camera just sits on him with his top off in that bizarre pose needlessly for like 4 seconds. They're like, oh yeah, we know he looks sexy. We're just going to leave this camera here for a minute.
There's that shot of, there's a really famous picture of Burt Reynolds naked on a bearskin rug.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever seen that one?
I've seen that, yeah.
Yeah, that's Jeff Goldblum's doing, isn't it? He's not naked on... Yeah, he is.
It's bizarre. I actually think...
What was happening at that point, let's be fair.
Yeah, I mean, he's very cool in this film, and it is that period. I think we talked about it when we did the Independence Day podcast. This was when he was like the oddly attractive but weird leading man. Now I feel like he's become a parody of himself. I don't mind Jeff Goldblum, but it feels like a shtick at this point. Whereas, at this point in his career, you look at this guy and you're like, well, he's handsome, but in an odd way. And he's acting slightly off kilter. And, it just made for an interesting screen presence and a really interesting leading man in films like The Fly and, a bunch of others that he was in, which I just can't remember off the top of my head. Well, Independence Day being one of them, obviously. But yeah, in this, he's, I think, a lesser character, or certainly a less likable actor. He would make that character is unpleasant. Like, he's a bit of a bummer. He shows up, all he does is bitch and moan. Then he gets injured. He keeps hitting on Laura Dern's character in a really sleazy way. He's wearing mostly leather, apparently. And anyone else, you'd be like, this guy's the worst. But because it's Jeff Goldblum, you're like, I kind of like him.
Leather in a subtropical climate, by the way.
It makes no sense.
Oh my God, he would have been getting changed in the middle of the night, and he would have had to have had like 3 people peel that leather jacket off him.
It would be pretty intense. But the weird thing is, going back and rewatching it, there was one thing. Like, of course, you suddenly start asking questions, like, why really is he here? Like, does he need to be here? And I had kind of, as a youngster, I totally blocked out like the reason they were there. The initial narrative of this film with the lawyers and the investors, that just, when I was younger, it just didn't go into my head. I just like, oh, well, they just go into a park with dinosaurs. And I blocked out all that kind of legal shenanigans in the background, but it's there and obviously linked into the novel. But I mean, even in this film, they pay...
He's a chaos. I still understand why...
It's a chaos theory thing.
He's a chaos theory person. Like, I don't understand why that's got to do with Jurassic Park.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I get why the lawyer's there. I get why, Laura Dern and Sam Neill, who's Nick.
I'm going to tattoo that on your forehead.
It's weird. This happens every so often with the name. I really like Sam Neill. I was going to tell you later. It's like, go watch Hunt for the Wilder People, Event Horizon, Dean's Family.
Stop being in my notes.
Oh, sorry. I do apologize. And Peaky Blinders. Actually, he is my way into a Northern Irish accent. Because when I watched Peaky Blinders, he said the most Northern Irish sounding thing I've ever heard. And it's just a number. He just said two. Like, sorry, I can't get it now. I've got to get away into like the accent. Like, what's the other words that's really Northern Irish? Oh, Pershire. If you say Pershire, it just sounds Northern Irish. And he just says two one day. And just one of the episodes, I was like, that sounds so fucking Northern Irish. But yeah, Event Horizon is another one we need to do. But I need to remember his name before we do that, of course. Jesus Christ, I'm having issues here. I can't remember what my point was now. I rambled on about the fact that I didn't know Sam Neill's name again.
Chaos Theory, why they invited him.
Why did they invite him?
They've invited Sam Neill, who was obviously an archaeologist. But is Laura Dern an archaeologist, or is she just some sort of...
No, they're both archaeologists, yeah. They work together.
Because I thought she was a grad student.
No, isn't it? They're in a relationship.
See, are they?
Well, I thought, because isn't there a bit when Jeff Goldblum's talking to Sam Neill in the car and they're together and he's talking about her, and obviously he'd just done that thing when he was talking about his stupid chaos theory thing with like the water, and it's just an excuse for him to totally feel her up. Again, a sign that Jeff Goldblum's character is a bit of a douchebag. And I'm pretty sure in the car then he says, it's like, oh, you two a thing? And he says yes. But you never really get that.
He says yes, because maybe he wants Jeff Goldblum to back off. But there's never any hint of them be like, and it feels like the one that got away kind of thing, especially when you look at like number 3, when she marries someone else. And then it's a big thing in Dominion. How she is no longer with this person, blah, blah, blah. And maybe they'll get back together. Mm-hmm. And although Jurassic World Dominion needs to be called Jurassic World Giant Fucking Locusts, because that's just all the film's about. But well, okay,
fair enough.
By the by.
But no, it is weird that their relationship is never quite... I guess that is a point. It's never made abundantly clear that they are indeed a relationship. And to be honest, the emphasis really isn't on them. It's just, well, they're friendly or they're close, whatever. But the emphasis is very much on Sam Neill and the kids, on Lex and Tim. It is Tim, isn't it? Yeah, Joseph Mazzello and...
who randomly...
Ariana Richards.
...was the fucking bassist in the Queen...
Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite bizarre. It's one of the weird ones. Like, it's always a dangerous game. Like, nothing can ruin a movie quicker than Unbearable Kids. And this film starts off poorly because the way they run it, nobody's that excited to see their granddad, ever. Although, admittedly, most granddads don't have an island with dinosaurs on it. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But I think they're doing a clever thing in this film because obviously the whole... narrative there is that Sam Neill hates kids. He doesn't know how to deal with them. Yeah. And Tim in particular, he's super annoying at the start. And you're like, oh, Jesus Christ.
The questions. Yeah, you're like...
Exactly. But I think they're purposefully playing up to that because if they were truly adorable kids straight out the gate, you wouldn't like Sam Neill in the way he reacts. So I think the fact that they warm to each other, Tim calms down, Sam Neill warms to them. Because, I hadn't seen this film for a few years. And I was like, I'm not sure if I'm liking, the kids in this film. But then after a while, I'm like, oh, no, I actually found the relationship quite...
Yeah, it goes back...
sweet, I suppose.
It goes back as well with them, to the horror aspect I was on about earlier on, in the kitchen, when they're hunted again by the Velociraptors. Like I said, I'm not done. They are Velociraptors.
They are Velociraptors, yeah.
So hunting them. So, sorry, subject change. If they're Velociraptors, what's the thing that spits into Nedry's face?
Oh, I can't remember what that's called. That's one of the lesser-known, smaller dinosaurs, which was made famous very much by this movie. It's got like the kind of ear thing going on. So it's kind of cool.
It does like the peacock plumage thing before it.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of like a rattlesnake, only a spitting rattlesnake. Yeah. But I have no idea. The only 3 I know, there's is it Bronchiosaurus? What the hell's the one at the start? The big, huge one with the long neck. Brachiosaurus. Like that's actually the first reveal in this film is the Brachiosaurus, and that is just to go look at the scale of what we can do. That can work. But what are the most? And sorry, I am stealing your point.
What do you call a dinosaur? What do you call a dinosaur with his headphones on? No, what do you call a blind dinosaur? Do you think he saw us?
Oh, Jesus Christ! And what was the one with a dog? Do you think he saw us, Rex? I mean, they're bad jokes, but again, they work in this film because it's quite sweet. But speaking of what works for all the special effects and the use of CG. One of the most impressive things, and one of the things that's aged amazingly, is the Stegosaurus, the one that's ill, and they have to go and find the big pile of shit. It's like Jack Goldblum delivers that great line.
Yeah,
that's a big pile of shit. Very on point. But the physical effects of that dinosaur, like CG, will never ever match that. I know, obviously, they can get away with it because it doesn't really move; it's just laying on its side.
Yeah, but
it really does. Like you could believe that is a real ill dinosaur, and that physicality of having them kind of react and obviously laying on his tummy. I just refuse to believe that CG will ever have that kind of physicality. And it's one of those bits that bit of Jurassic Park in particular will always look better than in that sequence. But yeah, sorry, I stole your point there. I do apologize. You don't know what your point was.
I mean, I can't even remember.
Do this so often. See, this is what happens when we just kind of just have random conversations. Yeah. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Telling jokes and shit now. What do you think
Velociraptors.
So that's the horror part, isn't it? The where they're hiding from the Velociraptors in the kitchen, and again, you get to your heart pumping a bit. So I've made my point with the horror thing and all that, but a more important point is, what do you think the shit was made out of?
I thought it might just be elephant shit. Now, that sounds pretty weird, but I went to a circus when I was younger, and I hated it because it just smelled horrible. And then one of the elephants, just randomly in the middle of the show, took a giant shit. And I tell you, no lie, it was as much shit as that was in the film. Like, it's no exaggeration. They shit that much. So I thought maybe they just got an elephant shit, but I guess practically that's unlikely.
Right. I hope nobody sees my Google search, because I've literally put in Jurassic Park. What is the poo made of?
Oh, so you don't know? You're actually searching it now?
Yeah.
Oh, so maybe it is elephant. But that'd be amazing if they actually got an elephant onto set to shit on...
I wish I hadn't Googled it, because it takes the luster away. I would have preferred it be an elephant shit, or something they had to suffer for their craft as actors to do. No. Mud, clay, and straw.
Oh, yeah, that's not very interesting. Although it does lead us to a good point about the sound effects.
It was smeared with honey.
Oh, well, at least it'd smell okay. Everyone likes honey.
That was to attract the insects, completing the effect.
Yeah. Well, like you mentioned earlier about the Velociraptors, and obviously we have the T-Rex, and it's one of the things you really can't underestimate the impact of it in this film, is the use of sound. Because now, I can't even think what Tyrannosaurus Rex on screen sounded like before Jurassic Park, because now it's so ubiquitous. There we go. I'll get the word.
You said that then. You were all teeth.
I know. I don't feel comfortable I got the word right at all. That it even means the right thing anymore.
Like, say, a phenomenon.
But no, Jesus Christ. But now it's like every movie since, if you've got a dinosaur, the T-Rex has to just sound like the T-Rex from Jurassic Park. It absolutely has to. And it was a lot of that came from the sound designer, Gary Rydstrom, I think is Rydstrom, sorry, Rydstrom. That's
Rydstrom sounds awesome, doesn't it?
But it was the sound used for the T-Rex in particular was a mix between his Jack Russell playing with a toy and a baby elephant. So to bring it back to the shit story with the elephants. And basically all he did was slow down the sounds of those. And by slowing the sound down, it makes the sound so much bigger. And then went up with this totally unique growl. And it's the same with the Velociraptors. And they do that weird caw kind of thing. And it shouldn't work. But then you watch the film, it's like, it just sounds amazing. Yeah, but the T-Rex...
Before this, all the dinosaurs were sounding like Godzilla, weren't they? You get that weird... It's
just like a roar. Yeah. Whereas the T-Rex in this film is so iconic. Like, you wouldn't even need to see the T-Rex. If you just heard the T-Rex sound, people are like, oh, that's the T-Rex from Jurassic Park. There's just no mistaking it. Yeah. But again, just another example of everything working perfectly.
I mean, speaking of no mistaking as well, I know we'll get to it in soundtrack, but the fucking theme in this is fantastic.
Oh, it's unbelievable. I mean, John Williams, again, another person just working at the top of his game. I mean, it's not just the main theme, but the font is brilliant as well. Like, everything in this movie works. The font's amazing. It's like you only need to see one letter. It could be any letter, and if you saw it on screen, you would know it's Jurassic Park. And do you know what I think the amazing thing is? If you ask someone to draw it, I think they would struggle to draw the font, but if you see it, it's just immediate. You just know it's Jurassic Park. And that, of course, combined with the score.
You're on about iconic as well. Those gates.
Oh, amazing.
The gates you go through and everything. Yeah, you see those gates. You don't even have to see the word Jurassic Park above it. You see those gates. You know exactly what you're looking at, and you know exactly what's coming. You do. And so much of this is built, again, about that whole Spielbergian thing, about building a sense of awe. And the only time it doesn't work, and I shared it with you earlier on Facebook, I apparently watched this film 7 years ago. And of all the quotes in the world, I just randomly quoted, they're moving in herds. They do move in herds. And that's just from Sam Neill. And I was like, why did I use that? And then I rewatched the film, and I know why. It's because it's fucking mental. They play up that scene where suddenly he's looking at the herds, and he says that bizarre line, they're moving in herds. They do move in herds. And as he's saying it, the score, the main theme score by John Williams, builds up in the background to this crescendo, like he's saying something revelatory. And I'm sitting there watching it, it's like, who gives a fuck?
Nobody cares. But for some odd reason in this film, they make it this huge moment. And I just cannot understand why. So yeah, I saw that quote. I was like, why did I use it? Then I rewatched the film. I was like, oh yeah, it's batshit crazy.
You know who gives a fuck though, don't you? People who've gone to Dinosaur Island to see dinosaurs. Oh, wait, no, because lawyers and chaos theory person and random people went to the fucking... So nobody cares about what's saying.
At least they're all kind of moved off the kind of playing fields. They either get killed or, you know, despite him being topless, Jeff Goldblum really isn't a big part of the second half of the movie. Yeah. Instead, they just replace it with Samuel L. Jackson smoking so hardcore in this film. It's like, if anything ages this film, it's his smoking.
I'm sure you're reading my notes because I was literally about to say, can we move on to Samuel L. Jackson? And the thing that needs an Oscar is Samuel L. Jackson's cigarette. Because Jesus Christ, that thing is working overtime.
He's smoking the butt. He is smoking the butt of that cigarette.
I'm sure it's super glued to his lip, dude.
Dude, he, like, all the way through he's smoking cigarettes, but there's one bit where the close-up is literally of his lips, and all that's left is the butt, and he's still fucking smoking that shit. He does not give a fuck.
You like to mention this on a lot of the podcasts, right? My God, this is a sweaty film.
It is a sweaty film, but at least they have a good excuse. You know, it's in the jungle, you're being chased by dinosaurs. I'd be sweating like a motherfucker as well. So I'll give him the benefit.
As a husky gentleman, I felt for Nedry being in that tropical climate.
He is so fat. Like, there's a way of like carrying a bit of timber. I say
husky and you come straight over with,
no.
That dude's fat.
No, because there's a difference, right? Someone can be husky and they can carry it really well. Like, some people carry weight really well. In the same way that some people, when they get skinny, it just doesn't look natural. Nedry looks so uncomfortable just being a human being. It looks like there's another human being inside him trying to get out every moment. Some people have that look about him. It's just like, being that size just looks uncomfortable. And some guys would be bigger than him, but they won't look as uncomfortable. There's just something uniquely uncomfortable about his skin in this movie.
He looks like every move he makes pains him.
Oh. But he does look happy in this film for the most part. He does look like a kid in a candy store, like you said earlier, the bit when he's like clapping his hands together. He is a little bit too stoked about screwing over his boss.
How in his mind, he became a secret agent. When they had that can of shaving cream, and he goes, oh, false bottom, you screw it out, there you go, get all the DNA you want. And he's just there, and he's so excited. He's like, yes, I'm 00 Ned or whatever it is. He's just so happy about it.
Such a douche. But I actually think some of as good as this movie is, I do think some of like the weird choices happen towards the end of the film, especially when they're fighting the velociraptors. So by the end of the film, obviously you've had the T-Rex moments. They're very much establishing at this point that the velociraptors are the bad guys. Like, they're the real shite bags of the dinosaur world. There's no two ways about it. And that's proved by the fact that the T-Rex kills the velociraptors and saves the day at the end. Because let's be clear, like the T-Rex is very much the Cadbury's Dairy Milk of the dinosaur world. Everyone loves the T-Rex. In the subsequent films, they kind of made him half a good guy, half a bad guy, like a bit of an anti-hero, don't they? But the velociraptors are the shite bag. So they're having the big showdown, but there's like a bunch of really weird choices just to keep the narrative moving. Like the bit when they're trying to hold the door closed. And of course, they kind of alluded to the fact that Lex can use computers and she goes full hackers. You know, she's moving through the internet and stuff. But Sam Neill and Laura Dern are holding the door, but the stress is coming from the fact that they can't reach the gun. The only thing is, Tim is standing there doing fuck all. Tim, go get the fucking gun. Push it over. You make all this fuss then about getting the gun. And then suddenly you've got two velociraptors and Sam Neill has got a shotgun. And basically, they remove the shotgun from the equation immediately. They say, oh, the velociraptor's getting in through the window. All of a sudden, you hear two bangs. The window's cracked, and suddenly the shotgun's on the floor. It was the worst use of a shotgun in cinematic history. It's like, how about you wait a second, get a clean shot on that fucking velociraptor, bro? He didn't even break the glass with a shotgun. There are a handful of really odd choices, but
you feel really strongly about this.
I do, and I think the reason is because the rest of the film is otherwise so close to being perfect that these moments kind of stand out like sore thumbs. But yeah, between that and the fact that I'm not sure how to feel about Jeff Goldblum, everything else is gold, and you quickly forget about it because then you have the amazing scene at the end where the T-Rex cleans out the velociraptors and that iconic shot. How great, like, you know, it's CG and how amazing it looks, and the banner falls down and you get the big T-Rex scream. It's just an amazing way to end the movie.
We haven't mentioned as well, is it Muldoon, Bob Peck, the supposed dinosaur hunting expert who Like he's like the security expert of something that doesn't exist. Like, oh yeah, I know how to deal with everything from dinosaurs. So we got the electric fences. Mate, this is brand new territory for us as human beings. How do you know what they can do or can't do?
Well, he doesn't. That's the whole. Like, he's obviously like he's not planned at all. Like the park, it's all a bit half baked. You know, they make the point earlier in the film, and obviously it's foreshadowing where Sam Neill tells the story. It's like, oh, you're one-on-one with a velociraptor, and then the two come in from the side and kill you. And of course, you would think if he's like the big hunting man, he might have done a bit of research, but he just falls straight into the classic velociraptor trap. That is straight out of page 1 of the Velociraptor playbook, and he falls straight into it. I mean, he does have that cool line, like you said, straight after, just before he dies. But Muldoon sadly looks the part, but a bit of a shite bag, sadly.
Yeah, you gotta love the hat with the cowboy hat with the one folded brim.
Again,
you know what I mean?
You talk about looking the part. You have the dodgy shorts, but for some odd reason looks badass with the hat. So yeah, he looks the part. He sounds the part. Sadly, he was not the part.
No, not at all.
Not at all. Not at all. So,
anything else you want to go over before we move on?
I've got a whole bunch of other notes, but Jesus Christ, I'd just be kind of mulling over stuff we've already discussed, or just going back to like halfway through the film, and that would be absolutely insane. So, yeah, we'll call it a day there and just cut straight to love and hate.
Yeah. So my loves are Sam Neill. I've always loved Sam Neill. Sam Neill's great. He's doing really well in this, especially the look he gives when he first sees the dinosaurs, because it makes you feel like, oh, I feel the same way.
Oh, he's fantastic in this film. Fantastic in this film.
It's a love and a hate, because I love Jeff Goldblum in this, but I also don't see the point in Jeff Goldblum in this.
Yeah, but those thoughts do tend to drift away when he's just sitting there for no reason with his top off. He's like, oh yeah, it doesn't make sense, but I'm going to go with it anyway.
I mean, it does raise the temperature a little bit. The other one is the fucking dinosaurs, dude. They look fantastic. We've already said it. They've done so well. You wouldn't believe it was shitty CGI. Like it's really good. I really enjoy it.
Oh yeah, it holds up incredibly well. I mean, in terms of loves, I don't want to say just Sam Neill. I'll say the whole cast, and the mid-90s was still the era of the movie star. We've talked about on previous podcasts. You know, nowadays it's franchises rather than movie stars. And this film was something where it's like, well, it's a Spielberg film, and we know we've got this Michael Crichton book. We know we've got something special. The dinosaurs are the stars. So they got kind of stars, but not massive stars. And obviously there was, talk of like Harrison Ford being in this film and Sean Connery. And I think, God, who else was there? There were a few other names. Sorry, they're dropping out of my head right now. But just a second. Who else was it? Christina Ricci was down. Robin Wright, William Hurt. So there were a bunch of kind of so-so names building up to like the big names. But I think they made the right choice with Laura Dern, Sam Neill, great actors and actresses who aren't going to take you away from, as we said, the real star of the show, which are the dinosaurs themselves. And Laura Dern's another one. Absolutely fantastic actress who's got an absolutely rubber face. If you want to see her rubber face to full effect, go watch her in anything David Lynch makes, because he just wants her to scream all the time. Like Inland Empire, not for everyone. I'll tell you that much right now. It's peak, David Lynch, but that and Wild at Heart, you get some real kind of like quality from Laura Dern, but you do get hints of it in this, especially the latter half when she's under, in distress and her face is just going all over the shop. But yeah, sorry, to cut my point short, great cast. Spielberg's direction, which I mentioned a bunch of times, is masterful. It takes a great idea, great concept, and just elevates everything. And the restraint in the use of CG, again, something we've already mentioned. Like T2, they found that sweet spot. They realized where the technology was in 1993, used it to its fullest effect, but used it in conjunction with peak level kind of physical effects. And it makes for a film, you mentioned it yourself, that is aged beautifully. And, hardly a day. The only stuff that really aged it are the computers. And as you mentioned, Samuel L. Jackson's smoking. And I'm going to sneak in John Williams' score because it's just the
best. For hate, the lawyer.
Yeah, fair enough.
I do hate the lawyer on screen. Usually they're just terrible people. This is a hindsight hate. Again, because obviously we've seen them all now. We said it's nearly 30 years of dinosaurs on screen. BD Wong is pretty much top billed for 2 fucking minutes of screen time. And then he becomes like the dark overlord of the next couple of films. It's the strangest fucking thing in the world. He
has a quite bizarre arc across the movies. He's very much the C-3PO of like the Jurassic Park series, where he just keeps popping up in every movie. And eventually they're just like, are we just going to make him the bad guy? It's like, well, I fucking guess so. Why not? We've done everything else.
I actually haven't said it, right? But do you want to know my third hate? Richard Attenborough.
Yeah. No, sorry. I was nodding and I realized we're doing a podcast. So yes, I would.
Richard Attenborough.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't see the point in him in this film. Like, he's just literally there for the money. It's just...
You can't just have a park. You need somebody... It needs to be somebody's park.
Yeah, I know, but usually if you've got somebody like this, the guy who owns the park then is the one who wants to save it, and he's going to make, like, oh, no, we'll cover it up, let people die sort of thing. So I do appreciate that he's not like that, but I don't know, it's just... he had a couple of words, he had a couple of things. It was just like, all right, we'll just show Richard Attenborough every
going
now
after
and then.
Going after Dickie, unbelievable. Although, funny enough, I do also
went after him.
Well, I do have Richard Attenborough on my list, funny enough, but for a completely different reason. I do think it's essential to the film, but it's the accent. Yeah, the fact that he abandons the Scottish accent, either do it or don't. You can't just do it for a little bit and then fuck it off. So yeah, one of my hates is Richard Attenborough's is accent. The other thing is, I don't need 5 sequels to this movie. You know, it's diluted what was an amazing... Don't get me wrong, it doesn't impact the original, which is still something of a masterpiece. But you can't escape the fact that these films have become more and more ludicrous as they've gone, and it is largely a case of diminishing returns.
I mean, breaking into legacy a bit, you know things are wrong when they go, right, we want a sequel, but we can't have the T-Rex anymore. So what we'll do is we'll make another dinosaur. We'll make one. We'll just make one that's bigger than the T-Rex, but the T-Rex should always prevail against in the fight. And it's just like, fuck off. Stop making new dinosaurs.
But like we were saying earlier, just the fact that if you keep making these movies, and of course, they don't have good ideas necessarily. All they know is, well, these keep making money, so we need to come up with an idea. So the only idea and the only way they go is just to keep making it bigger. The dinosaurs, bigger teeth, bigger, whatever. It is ludicrous, and again, it makes for considerably weaker movies as they go further on down the line, I suppose. Yeah. Which does link into my last hate, which is the sense of awe elicited by this movie might be a thing of the past. And it certainly is in regards to the Jurassic Park movies. And obviously, that's not an issue with the films. The issue is that they keep making them. But that sense of awe, we're just not going to get it again, whether it be in regards to dinosaurs or more specifically in regards to those cinematic moments. I'm waiting for that next big cinematic moment to go into a film. And not obviously you want to watch a good film, but to go in and go like, holy shit, I've never seen anything like that. And as I said, it's been like 11 years now. So.
Until it becomes like some sort of holographic entertainment, I don't think you're going to get that holy shit moment anymore.
Well, hopefully someone could come up with it. That's why they're paid the mega bucks. Who knows? Maybe Avatar, the sequels, will deliver something along those lines. You keep shitting it, dude. Don't bet against James Cameron. Like, I can't believe when I look online how many people are like, it's going to fucking bomb. I was like, dude, what the fuck? How have you not looked into this? You've not done any research. James Cameron, the narrative is always the same. And he always goes out and makes the biggest movie of all time. One of the things, actually, speaking about this film, was adjusted for inflation. This is like the 12th biggest movie of all time, which obviously speaks to just how popular it is. But some of the movies in the top 10, like adjusted for inflation, Avatar is still the second biggest movie of all time. Titanic is third, both James Cameron films. Number one, by a long way, is still Gone with the Wind, and I don't think that's ever getting overtaken. But some of the others on the list always surprise me. Like the 10 Commandments is on there, and the other one is Dr. Zhivago. It's like number 8 in the list of biggest grossing movies of all time. Like fucking 4-hour-long Dr. Zhivago. Absolutely insane. People complain about how long movies are. Gone with the Wind is 17 hours long and it's the highest grossing movie of all time. Who knew? Anyway, sorry, I've gone off the facts.
I appreciate that he's going to do well with Avatar 2, and I know this is becoming the Avatar.
And 3, 4, and 5, of course.
Yeah, and 3, 4, and fucking 5. But he did so well with everything I say so well. He worked on creating new animals, creating new planets, creating all this shit. The storyline is the same undercover fucking storyline we've had in any 80s film. And then they just want it because they want, and
I know the unobtainium.
Yeah, I know it's derivative because I keep saying it all the time.
No, but you're being derivative about something that is undoubtedly incredibly derivative. So it's absolutely acceptable.
Yeah. But
I totally understand
the fact he's bringing back people that died from the first one.
Yeah, that is a bit strange. I mean, I'm hoping that he's going to find a good excuse for that. And I do put my faith in James Cameron. I'm not saying he's, infallible kind of thing, and it might just turn out to be a mess. Yeah, but
you also put your faith in Will Smith. Where did that get you, dude?
Yeah. I've got to be a little bit careful now, kind of thing. Although the Tom Cruise thing has been vindicated with the Top Gun thing recently, so I'm kind of like 1 for 2 at the moment. So we'll see how the James Cameron thing.
Even a blind squirrel gets a nut.
Oh my God. I can't believe we're talking about Tom Cruise again. This is ridiculous. Anyway, facts. Facts, sir. This is your section.
Facts. Okay. Despite being called Jurassic Park, dinosaurs only have around 15 minutes of screen time. 9 minutes of Stan Winston's animatronics, and 6 minutes of it is Industrial Light and Magic CGI. This means only around 11% of the film is dedicated to dinosaur scenes. We've gone through the entire episode today going on about how great the dinosaurs look, and they're on the screen for 11% of the time.
Which is why the film's great. That's the mistake a lot of these new films make. It's just constant dinosaurs wall to wall. You mentioned Michael Bay earlier. It's a problem he has with his directorial style is that you're seeing this stuff on screen. You're like, this should be awesome, but you're just getting constantly punched in the face with it to the point where what was amazing is no longer amazing because you're just tired. And if you get 120 minutes of dinosaurs, but like 50 minutes in, you're like, I've kind of had a tits full of dinosaurs. Yeah. Whereas this movie always just shows you enough to keep it exciting.
One thing we actually didn't mention was Jurassic Park was based on Michael Crichton's book.
I think I did mention it briefly.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, because we worked on the screenplay with David Coep.
You said a lot at the beginning. I
did say a lot of stuff in fairness. The guy who then went on to make, what was it, Congo? Was that the other film?
Congo, yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ. That one didn't work out. We will not be doing Congo on this podcast. I can tell you that much. Rob, I feel like I have to remind Rob, we're not doing Congo. I guarantee I say all that shit. Episode 121, Congo. Fuck. That'll be the tagline. Just fuck. Congo, really?
Looking forward to a bit of Congo, watching Ernie Hudson take down some killer gorillas. Yeah, absolutely.
Jesus Christ. If we end up doing an episode of Congo on this podcast, we've run out of ideas. We've run out of good films. We're just going through the motions.
I'm pretty sure you'll let me do Garbage Pail Kids before we do Congo.
I would. I legitimately would, because at least that's going to be interesting in a truly horrifying way. There's no joy to be taken from Congo. Congo sits in the same category as Super Mario Brothers. It's shit. So yeah, let's move on from Congo.
Michael Crichton estimated that the screenplay has about 10 to 20% of the novel's content. I've never read the book, so if it's only got like 10, I kind of want to know where the book went.
I've never read it either.
Steven Spielberg received $250 million from the movie's gross and profit.
Not bad. He's not wanting for a bob or two in fairness, Senor Spielberg.
Ian says the line must go faster. Obviously, Independence Day, he said it as well.
That's cool, little nod, yeah.
Yep. Ariana Richards was upset by the fact that an action figure of her character was not produced. Kenner only made dolls of Grant, Sattler, Muldoon, Nedry, Tim, and eventually Malcolm. So Ariana Richards was the girl, wasn't it? She was that.
Yeah. She was Lex. Yeah. Which, in fairness, she doesn't do much other than scream. She, like I said, she gets that moment when suddenly she can do computers at the end of the film. Yeah. But for the most part, she's just kind of there to scream. Like, she's perfectly decent in the film, but not giving her an action figure is fucking harsh.
Sam Neill. Well, I mean, all they could do with the action figure was either give her a drawstring that screams or give her a mini computer because she was the
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it's a tough draw, but still.
Sam Neill injured himself in this. When lighting the flare, the phosphorus actually dropped onto his wrist and burnt his wrist.
It's worth it for the art. Worth it for the art. That scene's just the best. I really think it is top 3 scenes of all time. So yeah, if you got a burn on your wrist, dude, it was absolutely worth it.
I'm just digging through these now because we've said quite a lot of these.
It's okay. Just do 1 or 2 more and then we'll call it.
The sound of the T-Rex's footsteps were created by cut sequoias crashing to the ground.
Awesome.
So just cutting trees and just dropping them to the ground. That's the footsteps.
Yeah. Everything in this film just sounds amazing. Like I'm not sure if there are many films which sound better than Jurassic Park. Like them walking, them screaming, the sound effects, the score, everything is just dope.
Right, 2 more. This was Richard Attenborough's first acting role since The Human Factor, 14 years earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking 14 years earlier, 1979.
I know. It's very upsetting. It's very upsetting.
At
least that was before we were born, so that is something.
Not by much though. Dude.
Yeah, okay, it doesn't matter. Let's not do the maths. Say it's before we're born. That's all that matters.
The Dilophosaurus spit. That's the thing that attacks.
Dilophosaurus, yeah.
Used a paintball mechanism that actually spat from the model's mouth. The venom was made out of methacryl and KY jelly with some food colouring mixed in.
Yeah, because fair play, like it goes right in his face. That's not CG. He legit spits. He basically had, from close range, just somebody shot a paintball gun into his eyes. If Biker Grove taught us anything, that, well, if not fatal, can lead to blindness.
Yeah.
I'm blind, Jack. I'm blind.
Is that PJ or Duncan? Which one got blind?
Nobody knows. Nobody knows.
They're both the same. But how did that work, mate? Wayne? Oh, I got shot in the face with a paintball gun, but it wasn't paint. It was methacryl and KY jelly.
Well, nobody knows what methacryl is. KY jelly, everyone just thinks of film. Yeah, we all know what KY jelly is, but methacryl, I don't know. Is it involved in sex? Who knows what freaky shit goes on the internet? I mean, if you want to roll the dice and type in methacryl porn, there's probably something for you. But certainly, I think KY jelly and porn. I mean, you're going down a pretty dangerous, pretty hardcore route there. But methacryl, who knows where it'll take you?
Just be sure to turn your incognito mode on before you go down that road.
Oh, absolutely! Don't go do it in the living room, sitting next to your wife or anything dopey like that. It's like, oh, it was methacryl. I just thought it'd be funny. It's like, Jesus Christ, what the hell am I looking at? Monstrous.
Right, I'm giving up on facts after that.
Fair enough. A fine place to end, as fine a place as anywhere to end. Oh my God, I can't speak. It's all that methacryl chat. In terms of legacy, I mean, we've covered a lot of this, but I mean, obviously more sequels than we needed, but I don't think any of the films are actually actively bad. I don't think there's a situation like Die Hard 5 or Terminator Genesis. None of the movies are that bad. Like Lost World is fine. Even Jurassic Park 3, which I think most people consider to be the weakest, is okay.
It is literally just called, you've got Jurassic Park, Lost World, Jurassic Park 3.
Yeah. And then it's kind of like that, the Rambo system. First Blood Part 2, Rambo 3. Same kind of madness. And then it goes Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom, Jurassic World Dominion. And I haven't seen the latest one, but as I said, Jurassic World was fine. Absolutely fine. Like, they're all decent enough.
Jurassic World, I still say Jurassic World Haunted Dinosaur House or Die Hard in a House with Dinosaurs. Because
which, make no mistake, that sounds fucking amazing. That movie isn't amazing. It's fine. The first half in the Haunted House stuff, I actually think is probably the best stuff in it. It kind of goes off the rails and becomes a bit generic in the second half to the surprise of absolutely no one. But as I said, as a 6-movie series, go on the basis that Dominion is probably okay. There aren't too many stinkers. The problem is none of them come anywhere close to the original. Nowhere near.
And unfortunately, it's not going to stop, is it? You'll get some more Jurassic Park.
No. For all the bad reviews, Dominion's made plenty of money, so there'll be more Jurassic Park. Even if I think there'll be a bit of a gap now. But, 10, 15 years, there'll be another one for sure. Obviously, more merchandising you can shake a stick at. This film ingeniously included merchandising in the film. The badge on the side of the truck and everything. It's like, it's already selling itself before it even comes out, which was one of the things Michael Crichton did. Like, because Michael Crichton was working with Spielberg on ER together, of all things. And Spielberg asked him what he was writing, and he mentioned Jurassic Park, and he bought up the rights before the book was even published. So they were ahead of the game both in terms of the book and the merchandising. Absolutely amazing. I mentioned the fact that it's one of the most successful movie series of all time, the fact that it's the 12th biggest movie of all time adjusted for inflation. That's pretty much it for Legacy. I'm sure there are a bunch of other things, but in terms of the score, again, it's stuff we've already mentioned, but John Williams' score in this, he's just another one of many in this film working at the top of his game. Delivers all comedy, horror, romance. I mean, it's classic Williams. He's doing everything. Like Spielberg, you can make an argument for others being, the best kind of composer in movie history. The Zimmer, Morricone, Elfman. But really, when people think of movie scores, I think quintessentially people still think of Williams, don't they? Yeah. And one of the reasons is shit like this. You hear 2 bars of that, and we're at Jurassic Park. I know exactly where we are.
And to the listeners, right, if you want to hear a perfect version of the score, Google or go onto YouTube and look for Mr. Swallow Jurassic Park. Once you watch that,
this sounds like more porn, dude. Yeah, this totally sounds like more porn.
I said YouTube, not Pornhub.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Swallow Jurassic Park. You will never hear this fucking theme again without thinking of the lyrics. I'm sorry.
Yeah, which is insane. Like the lyrics, like, oh yes, the lyrics. And if you watch it, do stick with it, because I watched it, Rob sent it to me, and for the first 10, 20 seconds, I was like, dude, this guy's just annoying. By the end of it, you're like, this is brilliant. It is indeed brilliant. And now, like you, I am indeed singing the lyrics along with the theme tune, which also makes you a bit of a twat, because I love the theme tune, and I don't want to ruin it by me singing these made-up lyrics to go alongside it. So, watch it at your own, peril.
Sure. We might have to put it on our Facebook. And I'm thinking I might see if I can find it and put it on the end of this episode.
I think we should. I think people at least deserve to hear it, to go through what I've gone through. But like I said, you can stop before then, but it's up to you. In terms of video games, there was like a whole bunch, obviously, but there was, there's been some good, like half decent ones. There was Jurassic Park, the arcade game, Jurassic World Evolution, where you kind of create and manage a park. It's not my kind of thing, but I think it's quite successful. It's done pretty well I think it was by Frontier Development. There was a Telltale Games Jurassic Park game before they kind of really nailed the formula. I think most people, when they think of Telltale, obviously think of The Walking Dead. Before that, there was Jurassic Park. They did a Back to the Future game as well. But again, they didn't quite get the balance right. So I probably give that one a miss, if truth be told. But maybe the best one is actually the SNES original. So it was based on the movie. And it was just a lot more ambitious than your average Super NES game. I'm not sure.
Ocean? That was one.
Yes, that was the one. Yeah. So it was like top down, but it kind of followed the film quite closely. Obviously, it had a lot of the kind of platforming stuff, but definitely better than your average movie tie-in based, from 93, and certainly for a video game that was released the same year as the movie. But again, as to whether that's going to hold up now. But what would you want to see if you were going to have your dream Jurassic Park game now?
1999's Dino Crisis. Take the storyline of the coppers who go to the island out of it and put in Jeff Goldblum, Laura Dern, and Sam Neill, and you've got the perfect Jurassic Park game.
That's unbelievable, because you've gone obviously for Capcom then. Capcom developed Dino Crisis. I've also gone for Capcom, but a completely different way, because what I was thinking was it's basically, rather than playing as a human, because we've done this before, is you play as like a mid-tier dinosaur. So half the game is you having to go and hunt, because obviously a movie couldn't do a Jurassic Park movie from the dinosaur's perspective. But in a video game you could, if you give it enough to do. So like I say, if you make it a kind of mid-tier dinosaur, half the game is you hunting, obviously other dinosaurs, potentially other humans, humans at the park. But then also you have to deal with the fact that you're being hunted as well. And the first thing I thought of was Mr. X from Resident Evil, so another Resident Evil game. Yes. So I'd have Capcom developing this, which I didn't even think about the Dino Crisis link, but that makes perfect sense as well. So you're playing as like a mid-tier dinosaur, you have to hunt, but at any moment, of course, like Mr. X, a T-Rex can show up, and all you can do is survive. You can't fight back again. You either run or you hide or whatever. But I just thought that'd be an interesting twist. A Jurassic Park game based, in a world where you're the dinosaur, but with humans and dinosaurs like knocking around as well.
To be fair, I like that idea. That's quite good, especially the fear of something always hunting you as well. But I don't know, maybe because I just want to go back and play Dino Crisis.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Dino Crisis. So I think a lot of people want to go back and play Dino Crisis. So if you just add, basically,
1999 for the distant future of 2009.
Oh, what a game! What a game! I think Dino Crisis 3 kind of killed it. And if you can't remember it, it's a good reason. It was an original Xbox exclusive, and it was shite. And it was such a shame, because it was like such a beloved series. Not like quite top tier, but along the lines of, remember Onimusha? That was another Capcom game around this, in that kind of Resident Evil mold, but it had kind of like supernatural samurais and stuff. And Dino Crisis was like the third part of that kind of trilogy of games. And it just kind of died to death with the third one. And it's amazing they haven't brought it back, because, of course, everyone loves fucking dinosaurs. Not fucking dinosaurs, there's a comment.
Again, Pornhub.
Yes, of course. But Capcom seemed like the obvious choice. And people forget, Capcom used to make like great movie times back in the day. Certainly on like the NES days, it was like DuckTales, Chip and Dale, Willow, the game of that was pretty decent. They made the Aladdin game for the Super NES, admittedly. It wasn't as good as the Virgin Interactive one for the Mega Drive, but, still pretty decent.
Which is the one where you jumped on a camel a lot. Was that the Mega Drive one?
That was the Mega Drive one, the one where you used to throw apples and shit.
Yeah.
Not apples and
shit.
Apples and shit. I mean, maybe it's Agrabah. Anything goes. But anyway, so we'll get to the scores and, whether you'd recommend it, which seems a little bit pointless, because I don't know, actually. I'll be interested. You go first. Well, what's your score, sir? I assume you'd recommend it. Everyone's seen it anyway. You don't need to recommend Jurassic Park. Everyone's fucking seen it.
I feel like you're setting me up to fail.
If you give it 3 stars, if you give it the same score as Howard the Duck, you have indeed failed.
Oh fuck! Hang on, let me change this. It's a 4, isn't it? For me, it's a 4. It's really good.
I love how you changed that. It's a 4 in fairness, where you fully well know that I'm going to give it 5 stars.
I do. That's why I said for me.
Of course.
It is a 4-star film. It can be better, but like I said, the now I know it's only 11%. They probably could have done more dinosaurs on screen.
Fair enough.
I mean, I really enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. And I mean, if nobody's seen Jurassic Park or nobody's even heard of Jurassic Park, I mean, where the fuck have you been? It's everywhere. But I would recommend it to people who haven't seen it.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to recommend because we've mentioned it a bunch of times. It holds up so well. I mean, we talked about it on previous podcasts, the fact that I am surprised every so often at the movies people haven't seen. And I don't mean that in a judgmental movie kind of guy way. I mean, how have you not seen Rocky? That's what I'm surprised by. Like, how have you not seen Die Hard? I just assumed everyone is it. Like, I knew one person who hadn't seen a James Bond movie. Like, how the fuck is that? I don't even particularly like James Bond, but everyone's seen James Bond, or at least a James Bond. So I assume maybe there's somebody out there who hasn't seen Jurassic Park. I find the idea absolutely perplexing. But if you haven't, yes, of course, the first thing I'd say to you is like, dude, you have to see Jurassic Park. And the reason you have to is because it's a 5-star film. I think it's an absolute masterpiece. I think it's Spielberg at the top of his game. I mean, I love Spielberg, which, it's not exactly a big statement. Most people will do. And like I said, back in 93, this is still, I think he was in the midst of that kind of all-time run, from Jaws through to, I would say around 93, like that run for like just over a decade where nearly everything he touched turned to gold. Not everything, admittedly. There was 1944. Is that what it's called, 1944, with John Belushi and stuff? The war movie he did? Am I making that up? Yeah, I think it's called that anyway. But he didn't do
Catch-22, did he?
No, he didn't. He also did a slightly dodgy film with Richard Dreyfuss. I'm not talking, of course, about Close Encounters. That film's a masterpiece. But yeah, the point being, Jurassic Park, I think, is a 5-star film, easily the best in the series. Like I said, a bit disappointing that you're never going to get that moment again. If I told someone to watch it now, it's not going to be the same as watching it in the cinema as 1993. You're never going to recapture that moment. But the fact that nearly 30 years later, I watch it and I'm watching it and I'm trying to find fault. And other than the shotgun issue, I'm like, this film's pretty much perfect. So yes, easy to recommend 5-star film for me. So yes, off the back of that 5-star masterpiece, Rob, what is the choice for next week, sir?
Well, it's actually a little bit fortuitous. As I'm looking at you now over screen, you're wearing what I can only say is a Korean volleyball team's vest.
It's a Korean basketball top, but yeah, close
enough. So we've had an email from Korea.
I assume that's my brother then, yeah?
You kind of ruined it, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Long-time listener, first-time caller or emailer. Official request for Point Break from a Mr. John Pritchard.
I mean, that's a good shout. I mean, fair play. My brother's got pretty good taste in movies. I mean, in fairness, he's got very similar taste to movies, almost the same as me. We grew up watching the same films, obviously. Yeah, and it's almost amazing. Now, like, as soon as you mentioned it, you're like, how the fuck did we get to 70 episodes and we haven't done Point Break?
Absolutely. I've always wanted to do Point Break, so I'm really pleased with that. So that's why I chose it off the email.
There are certain words, and I'm from Cardiff, obviously, and I have a bit of an accent. But I live up in Scotland now, and I think my accent's kind of leveled out a bit. For the most part, absolutely fine. I don't notice the fact that you live in Cardiff. But this week with Jurassic Park, I noticed it. No words, and it's not your fault. No word sounds more Cardiff than Park. Like, it's just like we overpronounce those A's. Jurassic Park kind of thing.
How did you get here? Well, I had to go round the roundabout.
Yeah, nonsense like that. But yeah, we do overpronounce our A's in Cardiff, and certainly for Jurassic Park, we've managed that. See, I've tried to flatten it. That's the thing. Up in Scotland, it's the complete opposite. They completely flatten their vowels. A-E-I-O-U, flattened. You want to hide those as much as possible. Whereas back in Wales, we want to stretch those bitches out as far as they'll go.
No wonder we're not getting listeners. Is because I'm fucking saying Park.
So I'm going to give you I can't say legacy. I'm overdoing Park. Jesus Christ. What else am I saying fucked up?
I know.
Loads, probably. But on that horrifying note, thank you for joining us for Jurassic Park this week. And please do join us for another Stone Cold Classic Point Break next week. Thanks, guys. Oh, and before we forget, here is Rob with all the finer details. Got to get through those, dude.
Yeah, so basically you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at HeyYouGuys80s. We're also on email at heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Please feel free to drop us any recommendations, any corrections or omissions we may have missed from any of the films that we've covered. Just get them in. And also, if you could, please leave us some 5-star reviews. That would really help us. And we'd like to thank, as always, Darry Fletcher at Darry Doodles for the fantastic artwork that we're now producing.
Cheers, Darry.
Thanks again for listening, and we will see you next week.
Cheers. Bye.
Jurassic Park, it's a massive park. What could possibly they go wrong. Everyone gets killed except the great Sam Neill. Who's obsessed? Who's obsessed? Who's obsessed? Who is obsessed? Who's obsessed? They